You know that feeling you get when you realize you've got mice?
Oh, yeah.
It's just the worst. Dealing with mice can be a real nightmare.
It's true.
But, knowledge is power, right? Understanding your options is a big step towards getting rid of those pesky critters.
For sure.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Bowden Pest Control. We're going to figure out what makes them tick. What's so special about their so-called single feed bait? And how can you figure out if they're the right choice for, reclaiming your home from those furry little invaders?
Sounds good.
So one thing that really jumps out at me is their service area. It's huge. They cover Bowden, Innisfail, old surrounding acreages. They even go all the way out to Horseshoe Lake.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. That right there tells me they've probably seen it all when it comes to mouse problems.
Right.
I mean, think about it. You've got rural properties, you've got urban environments, you've got those old farmhouses, and then you've got modern apartments. They must have a ton of experience tackling all sorts of mouse situations.
Yeah, it definitely suggests they know how to adapt their approach depending on where those mice are hiding out.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about the single feed bait for a second. Their website says it kills mice in one feeding and does not affect people or pets.
Interesting.
Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds way different from those multi-feed bait traps you find at the hardware store.
Yeah, it does. That's a huge point of difference. Those multi-feed baits, they take forever to work.
Right.
Like the mouse has to keep coming back and nibbling on it multiple times before it's finally effective. And in the meantime, what's that mouse doing? Ideally one bite and the problem's solved.
Okay, that makes sense. So potentially faster, safer. But how does it actually work? What's the science behind it? Because it's so different from what we're used to.
Well, that's where things get really interesting. I can't say for sure what specific ingredients Bowden Pest Control uses, but they're probably using a very specific active ingredient that's deadly to mice in a single dose. But it doesn't pose the same kind of danger to humans or pets.
So it's about precision.
Yeah. Minimizing that collateral damage.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about getting rid of mice. It's about doing it in a way that's safe for everyone else in the house.
Exactly.
So let's talk about their service plans for a minute. They offer 3 options: a single visit, a 6-month protection plan, and a 1-year protection plan.
Okay.
The single visit seems pretty straightforward. They come out, they deal with the immediate problem, and then you're good to go. But what about those protection plans? What makes them different?
Yeah, the protection plans are where things get a bit more interesting. Both the 6-month and the 1-year plans include these follow-up visits. They say up to once per month if there's any continued mouse activity.
Okay, so that up to part is important. What does that actually mean? What kind of factors would make them decide to come back within that time frame?
Well, it really depends on a bunch of things. How bad is the infestation?
Right.
Are we talking about just a couple of curious mice? Or is it a full-blown family reunion happening up in your attic?
Yeah.
And then you've got to think about things like entry points. What kind of gaps and cracks are letting those mice in? And are there any things in the environment that might be attracting them to your house in the first place?
So it sounds like getting a proper assessment is crucial to figuring out the right plan.
Oh, absolutely.
Before you even call them up.
Yeah.
What kind of questions should you be asking Bowden Pest Control to make sure everyone's on the same page?
Honesty is key here. Tell them everything. Don't hold back. How long have you been noticing these mice? Where are you seeing them? Are there droppings or things getting chewed on? The more details you can provide, the better they can understand just how big the problem is.
Right. Because a couple of mice sneaking in to escape the cold is very different from a massive infestation that's been brewing inside your walls for months.
You got it.
And what about their single feed bait? Should people be asking about the specifics of that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid to get into the nitty-gritty.
Like, how do they make sure it's placed safely?
And what kind of follow-up can you expect?
It's really all about peace of mind, right? Knowing you've got a solid plan in place and that Bowden Pest Control is there to help you through it. It's about understanding the enemy, so to speak.
Right, like a good general. They got to study the battlefield before they send their troops in.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've got these different species of mice with different vulnerabilities, and then we've got Bowden Pest Control, who's out there, studying the battlefield and coming up with targeted solutions. But how does that actually play out when it comes to their single feed bait? Is that part of their, specialized approach?
Absolutely. Remember how we talked about those multi-feed baits? They require multiple doses to be effective. Well, Bowden Pest Control single feed bait, it's all about speed and efficiency. One bite and the mouse is out of the picture.
Okay, but speed isn't the only factor here, right? What about safety? Is that single feed bait safe for kids and pets?
That's a huge concern, and that's another area where Bowden Pest Control's expertise really shines through. By using a highly targeted bait and placing it strategically, they can minimize the risk to other animals in your home.
So it's like they're snipers, not just, carpet bombers. They're going in with precision and eliminating the target without causing unnecessary harm.
Exactly, they're minimizing the collateral damage.
Okay, so we've got speed, we've got safety, we've got targeted solutions. Sounds like a pretty impressive approach. But let's shift gears for a second and talk about their service plans. They offer a single visit, a 6-month protection plan, and a 1-year protection plan. What's the difference? And how do you know which one's right for you?
Well, the single visit is pretty straightforward. They come in, they assess the situation, they treat the problem, and they're out. It's like a one-time fix.
Okay, but what about those protection plans? Why would someone choose those instead of just going with a single visit?
Well, think about it. Mice are pretty resourceful little creatures.
Like,
Even if you get rid of the current infestation, there's always a chance that new ones will try to move in, especially in a place like Alberta where those winters can get brutal. Those mice are looking for a warm place to hunker down.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the protection plans are kind of like an insurance policy. You're protecting yourself against future infestations.
You got it. Both the 6-month and the 1-year plans include those follow-up visits we talked about. Remember, they say up to once per month if there's continued mouse activity?
Right, right. So Bowden Pest Control is basically acting like your personal mouse patrol. They're regularly checking for signs of new activity and nipping any potential problems in the bud.
Exactly. They're staying one step ahead of those mice.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the appeal of those protection plans.
Yeah.
But we keep saying up to once per month. What does that actually mean? What kind of factors determine how often they'll actually come back?
Well, it really depends on the specifics of your situation and what they find during that initial inspection. How bad was the infestation? Were there a lot of entry points? Are there any environmental factors that might be attracting mice to your property?
So they're not just following a set schedule. They're constantly evaluating the situation and adjusting the plan as needed.
Exactly. It's a dynamic approach. They're adapting to the ever-changing mouse landscape.
So you're not just paying for a one-time treatment. You're paying for that expertise, that ongoing monitoring, and that peace of mind, knowing that someone's got your back when it comes to mice.
Precisely. It's a partnership. Bowden Pest Control brings the expertise, and you bring the commitment to keeping your home mouse-free.
Okay, so we've talked about their expertise, their single feed bait, their protection plans. It sounds like they've got a pretty solid approach.
They're going to be super mindful of your family's safety, especially if you've got kids or pets running around.
Okay.
They'll ask about any allergies or sensitivities, explain all the precautions they're taking, and they'll make sure everyone's protected throughout the whole process.
So it's not just about getting rid of the mice. It's about doing it in a way that's safe and responsible for everyone involved.
Exactly. Now, once they've taken care of those initial safety checks, that's when the real detective work begins.
Okay.
They're going to do a thorough inspection of your property, both inside and out, to really get a sense of what they're dealing with.
So, what are they looking for specifically?
Well, they'll be looking for any signs of mouse activity, like droppings, gnaw marks, nests, things like that.
Okay.
But they're also going to be looking for any potential entry points, like cracks in your foundation, gaps around pipes, vulnerabilities in your roof. You got to think like a mouse to find those weak spots.
So they're not just looking for the mice themselves. They're looking for how the mice are getting in and what's attracting them to your property in the first place.
Exactly. And this is where their experience really comes in handy. They've seen it all. They know all the tricks those little critters use to sneak into your house.
So it's not just about setting traps. It's about understanding mouse behavior and using that knowledge to develop a really targeted approach.
You got it. Once they've finished the inspection, they'll sit down with you and explain everything they found in plain English. No jargon, no scare tactics, just a clear and honest assessment of the situation. Now, the actual treatment itself, that's going to vary depending on what they find during the inspection. It could involve bait placement, sealing up entry points, maybe even some habitat modification around your property.
Okay, habitat modification. What does that mean?
Well, it's basically about making your property less appealing to mice. So things like trimming back bushes that are touching your house, clearing out clutter that might provide hiding spots, making sure you don't have any standing water that could attract them.
So it's a proactive approach. You're not just reacting to the problem. You're
Yeah.
trying to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you've signed up for one of their protection plans, that initial visit is just the beginning. They'll be back for those follow-up visits to make sure the mice haven't staged a comeback.
So it's a long-term partnership.
Mm.
Bowden Pest Control is there to provide the expertise, and you're there to, keep up your end of the bargain by making your home as unwelcoming to mice as possible.
Precisely. It's a team effort. You're both working together to achieve that ultimate goal, a mouse-free home.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into Bowden Pest Control. We've learned about their expertise, their single-feed bait, their customized approach, and their commitment to safety and customer satisfaction.
We've seen that getting rid of mice isn't just about setting traps. It's about understanding their behavior, taking a proactive approach, and finding a pest control company that you can trust.
So for our listener who might be dealing with a mouse problem right now, what's the key takeaway?
Don't give up hope. There are solutions out there. Do your research, ask the right questions, and find a pest control company that's going to work with you to get those mice out of your house and keep them out for good.
Excellent advice. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. We hope you found it informative, empowering, and maybe even a little bit entertaining. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay mouse-free.